Well, joining us here today is Austin Chadwick, owner and publisher of Vype magazine, former TU Golden Hurricane. Man, Austin, I feel like this time of the year, me and you always get together. Normally, it's in your office. I come down and we chat, and then I go ahead and try and pick up some of those magazines that you love to put out for everybody in Oklahoma. But this year, it's a different situation. So, I mean, thank you for joining us here on this platform.
Well, what you guys are doing is pretty exciting. It for all this stuff forces us to change how we operate, how we do business, and a lot of unknowns. But at the same time, the word I keep hearing is unprecedented, right? And so, but no, you guys are doing a great job. I've watched a bunch of the videos and obviously the broadcasts you guys have been able to put together. And yeah, Dion, this is about the time of year we hook up and start talking ball. And now we're on the other side now. We don't have to dread those workouts anymore. So now we get to just talk about it, right?
Exactly. But okay, now that you mentioned workout, as former athletes, we know how things work. So when we get together, we have to stretch and get warmed up. So what we do here is we do a little pregame, all right? We ask you some ice-breaking questions, let the viewers get to know you before we really get into the hard-hitting questions, all right?
Got it.
Cool with that?
I'm good. You know me. Fire away.
All right, so first question, all right? Heavy hitter here, okay? Movie category. You pick two, I pick two, and you choose one. One of the two. You can only choose one, Austin, all right?
Okay.
Top Gun or Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
You did some research now there.
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off was always kind of a novelty for me. But Jimmy Tramley, who's written for the Tulsa World for many years, he did an old piece on me when I was playing ball at Tulsa. And he knew I wanted to be a naval aviator because I took my trip to the Naval Academy, but I was a little too big to fit in just about any cockpit they had, and my eyesight was horrible, so I was not going to be a pilot. But with that being said, Top Gun, hands down, all day, every day. I'll take it over any category, anywhere. That is my favorite. I can quote that movie. I could quote it when I was in the third grade. That is my favorite movie.
All right, next question. All right, going back until this little generation that we have here. As far as social media goes, which platform do you like best? Is it Instagram or Twitter?
Ooh, that's a good one. Now, the younger kids, Instagram is a little bit better. I try to be all noble in my answering here because I'm like, well, I don't need to do all the selfie stuff. I don't need to like blast pictures of me out there. But I'm more of the news guy, and that's my go-to. That's where I get my news. That's where I get my sports. That's where I get to follow anything and everything, whether it's YurView and Cox or whether it's games of the week. Anything that goes on Twitter, that's where I'm able to get everything. Now our younger generation that's working here in the office, they've got Vype on Instagram and all the different platforms, and so we don't discriminate. We're going to use them all, but Twitter that's my go-to.
All right. I mean, I'm glad that y'all are on Instagram, though. I'm glad that the younger generation is keeping you up to speed.
Yeah, we don't have a choice, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, next question, last one. Okay, this is the heavy hitter right here. Okay. Think about it. 86 Celtics versus the 96 Bulls. Who are you going with, Austin?
Man, you got to understand, Dion. You're closer to my age than you think, but 96 Bulls all day, every day. You know, and on the heels of the documentary with Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, people just don't understand how that guy was cut. He just cut different, and certain guys are like that. And the beauty with sports, and this is what I just love about it all, and you understand it because you lived it and played it. You have so much with all the different things that are going on with with society right now and all the stuff that we're going through. I just love how it depicted the locker room. It depicted the relationships with all the players, no matter who they were, no matter what background, what creed, what anything. And it was kind of cool to see that. But all day, every day, I've got to pick Jordan. I mean, if that guy if he is determined and he has any kind of reason to win, he's going to win. And it does not matter. It was almost funny because as we were growing up, the Bulls were like losing games here and there in the finals. And you're like, why are they losing? And then now you see the documentary. It's like, yeah, they really weren't that interested. They really didn't have much to play for. But then after they got beat, a player on the other team would pop off to Jordan. It's like, all right, you ain't winning the next one. And so it was crazy to see that kind of competitive spirit. I think we need more of that. I know he took it to the line and maybe overstepped the line a couple times, but at the same time, you know, the generation of kids nowadays, it's a rare breed to find those guys that will win at all costs. They will do anything they can for the team effort, and but it's just a good message to talk about where those kids who are developing and learning, especially in high school and in college, that they understand that, hey, you think you're working hard and you think you're, you know, putting out the effort to be better and make your team better, but no matter how hard you work, you look at the situation of what happened with the Chicago Bulls and the documentary on Michael Jordan, you got to take it to that degree. And so I just think it's really good for those guys to understand. And competition is everything. I mean, that's everything. And I think we need it right now. We haven't had any kind of athletics in a long time. And getting back to competition, getting back to just kids competing is it's going to be therapeutic for everybody. It really is, to get back to playing ball and football that we love, or basketball or anything else.
It certainly is. Certainly is. So we're talking to Austin Chadwick, owner and publisher of the Vype magazine. Austin, now we get into the hard-hitting questions here. I want to ask you, start from the very beginning, all right? So you are a former Tulsa Golden Hurricane, and you played the sport that we both love, football. Why did you start playing this sport, and what has it meant to you growing up?
Well, it was funny. My father played for your alma mater, and he played in the '60s with Walt Garrison and those guys. He's part of those Phil Cutchin days at OSU, and so I grew up a massive OSU fan. My mom's family's from over there. They had Groom's Furniture over there for years, and so from that standpoint, you know, football was always kind of the passion of our family. And but honestly, baseball was my love. I loved baseball. My grandmother was from Kentucky. It was Northern Kentucky. She would send me Cincinnati Enquirer articles all the time with the Cincinnati Reds. So I grew up a massive Reds fan and played competitive baseball growing up. And it was funny because I started kind of getting burned out in baseball when I hit about 13, 14 years old. And I always played football, obviously, and was pretty good at it. But I was getting bigger and I was getting stronger. And I started kind of, I don't know if I want to go to all these baseball games and practices. And Dad was okay with that. He was almost like, okay, now that we're kind of burned out on baseball, let's really start focusing on football. And we started doing that. And then I always had love for football, but then it became life. I mean, football became everything. And so grew up in Bill Blankenship's system at Union when they were really developing the INFC and all that stuff back in the 90s. And so I had a great group of guys. We all came up through the ranks together, tons of phenomenal athletes and guys that went all over the country to play. And we had a pretty special team, and football just became everything. And then it gave me an opportunity, obviously, to go on and play at the next level. And I loved it. And you show up and you're getting your school paid for, and you're getting your books paid for, and everything's is great there. But then you really start developing the competition in college. It's like you got to reset everything. You know, you got to go earn your stripes and go do it again. And the next thing you know, you're competing again. And then it just became a part of life. And it taught me everything. Any attribute I have or intangible I have, whether it's hard work, drive, courage, determination, whatever it might be. I mean, everything from how I think to how I approach people, the inclusion that I have, the brothers that I played with that were brothers at arms, no matter what race, creed, color, it didn't matter. That's the beauty of football. And it's funny because I always say, not everybody gets the opportunity to do, Dion, what you and I got to do. And when you experience a locker room at especially at the D1 level, but at any college level, where guys are coming from all kinds of places and geographic places and backgrounds, you break down all barriers, and it changes guys forever. It really does. And so you're built different, you're programmed different in how you treat people. And then at the same time, being able to take all those intangibles you learn, get your degree and then go on and try to be successful in life and be a productive citizen, and do it the right way. That I owe everything to football. I owe it all to football. I tell my wife all the time, as our kids our little guys starting to play some football and understanding how it works and competition and how to treat people in fairness and all that stuff. And it's hard to explain. You understand it, but we can't say it enough that, especially with all the stuff that goes on in society, there's kind of a brotherhood there that if you've been through that fire, if you've been through those situations, with all kinds of diversity and the people that you grow and you develop and you become a man with, it changes you, and it changes. Really, you're privileged in the sense that you're able to live your life the rest of your life, and you have this in your DNA. It becomes a part of you, on how to treat people and how to respect people, and really go to battle with people and love one another. And so that's again, when you talk about football, I owe it all to that. The coaches we had, and you're the same way. You understand it, you get it, and so it's a pretty special thing.
So you just spoke about that you went through the union and blanket ship organization type atmosphere. And so what was, in your opinion, what's the difference right now between high school back then and high school now?
That's a good question. Now, I'll say it's still relatively the same. I think they take a little bit more precaution. Back in the day, and I said back in the day, in the 90s, there was probably not as much attention being paid to the maybe the medical side of things, where, gosh, if you got hurt or if you got some heat exhaustion or something like that, the coaches did their best and they were trained to do what they could do. But nowadays, I have to give football a lot of credit. I got to give the NFL a lot of credit, because I didn't think they could do it and change the way that the game is played, how you hit, how you're able to tackle and all that stuff. But it has trickled down, obviously, into college and into high school and into the youth. People are so much more aware. And high schools, they make it a priority to have a certified ATC, an athletic trainer there working with you while you work out in the summertime, or if you're at practice. The physicians come around more. And so that's probably the biggest component, is that it's more safe. And I try to explain this to parents all the time. I coach little league guys now, and I'm trying to explain to the parents, like, safety is priority one. It does not matter. If a kid, gets popped pretty good and he comes off and he doesn't look right, he ain't playing. That's how it works. And so, and I think parents are more aware of that now. High schools are more aware of that. Coaches are more aware of that. And just the overall healthcare, if you will, of football athletes today is probably a little bit better than it was back then. But overall, it's still roughly the same. I will say one thing, Alan Trimble and Bill Blankenship instilled a lot of that summer pride stuff where you work out during the summer. And that was kind of new. We knew guys worked out in the summer to get ready for the season, but when it became regimented and organized and you did it as a team, colleges had really started doing it in the late 80s, early 90s. And then now all of a sudden in high school, but not just high school, but in the youth systems as well. And we're playing baseball. A couple of the dads on my team have kids at Bigsby right now. And dude, these are 8-9-year-old kids. And I mean, what are they going to do? They're not going to do a bunch of massive weight training, but they go to their little Bigsby summer pride, and they get to work out with the varsity coaches. It's mainly running, but it's technique. You learn little things here and there, but it instills in those kids. They're 8 years old and they're working every morning. They're getting up and they're going to workouts and having a good time doing it. And that's part of it, where it's become so much more regimented, and these kids learn to work. I mean, by the time they get into high school, they know what it's like to work and fatigue your body and push yourself past your limits. And that's just going to help them in life. It just will.
And you mentioned something earlier that kind of, caught my attention. We both were able to reach the next level after high school, which was Division I football. And you mentioned everybody has that goal to get to that next level. But once you reach that goal, it's time to set a new one, and you have to, refocus yourself on setting new goals and accomplishing what you want to accomplish. You mentioned you had to do that. How did you get that accomplished, and what do you owe it to?
Well, sometimes it's survival of the fittest, right? I'll go talk, back when Tom was still alive and Chad Lott, and they run the INFC, I would go talk to some of the dads and the parents there. And I'd be a little bit probably too abrasive, because I would basically tell these fathers of these kids who are, the dads are the coaches, and the main goal and priority for those dads and coaches in INFC and youth is if you burn out kids, if you go crazy tackling drills all day, every day, you're going to drive kids out of programs. Okay. Yeah. Kids they're not stupid. Okay. And so when you line up and go just nuts on the tackling drills, and you've got your biggest kid just wearing other kids out, they're not going to play football for very much longer. But I always try to tell these coaches that, listen, when it comes to the highest level in football, especially in college, 99% of it is already decided for your children with their genetics, if you will. If you're a father and you're coaching your kid and you're about 5'10", a good athlete, and that's great, your kid's not going to be a 6'5" quarterback. That's just not going to happen. And so from that standpoint, you got to educate some of these parents sometimes that, hey, your kid's not going pro. It's okay. But if you can just bring it down to relative terms, and you can look at it from the standpoint of developing and understanding how these kids work, it's just to create the love of the game and to understand it and do it. And I think that was it for me, is that, when I got to a point where I was in middle school and getting into high school, I kept growing and kept growing. Next thing you know, I was about 6'4", and I had an opportunity just genetically to be able to play at the next level. And luckily, I had the work ethic, I had the ability, had the technique, and was able to maximize with hard work the tools that I had to get myself to a point to where you had college recruiters saying, "Hey, we want to take a chance on this kid," and we give them a scholarship. So sometimes. If you're gifted enough to have some of the genetics, to be tall enough, to be long enough, if you will, and strong enough to give the tangibles, if you will, that college coaches look for, you have to have the hard work, because that's what's going to separate it. Because like I do, Dion, the minute you walk into that locker room in college, you're like, everybody's big around here and everybody knows how to play. And so you kind of check your ego at the door. You can't bring your touchdowns in high school with you. And generally it's that first day of practice, you get lit up by a senior and you're like, okay, I'm out here with grown men and I got to figure this thing out. So it becomes the survival of the fittest. So
I definitely remember the first time walking into that locker room, seeing Ori Lemon looking in front of me and say, "What's up?"
Yeah, that dude.
Ooh, that's a man.
Yes, grown man. And so but it's great. I mean, again, like you said, and there's guys that kind of fall out. There's guys that aren't quite built for that. And when you realize in college, some kids today, and that's the hard part, a lot of them like being recruited, and that's it. They get to college and they really don't amount to much, but they loved being recruited, right? And that's where the guys that make it in college, they don't care how many offers they have. They really don't. They don't care, all the publicity that they get. They just want to play football, and they want to maximize what they've got. And even in this day and age with kids and their brand, especially at the college level, and doing different things. We do the recruiting stuff with the ghost mail stuff we do. And these colleges are telling these kids, hey, we'll help your brand. We'll create logos for you. We'll do different things to help you on social media create your brand. But I always go back to the number one reason why the brand works. The only way that your brand works is if you're any good at football. Okay. Yeah. So you got to be good at football because nobody's going to care if you're not any good at football. So from that standpoint, I just think with this generation of kids, sometimes they want all the glitz and glamour and publicity, but at the same time, it's you gotta show up. And when you get to college and you find yourself in camp and you find yourself dragging and you just want to quit, you don't want any more of it. That's where you got to find out, the gloves are off, if you will, if you're gonna be a decent football player in college and maximize the ability that you got. And it's not for everybody. It really isn't. And so that's what's special about it.
And that's one of the things that we just talked about, The Last Dance in that Jordan documentary. Mm-hmm. Nobody's wearing Jordans as much as we all wear them and as much as we're paying for them right now. If Jordan didn't put in the hard work to be as great as he did.
The best part about that whole Jordan documentary, you remember when he broke his foot his second year in the NBA?
Didn't know that until I saw the documentary.
Right. And I'll never forget seeing a tweet from Rex Chapman or somebody saying, Jordan ain't got time for your load management. And it was great to hear, because you see that stuff with basketball, baseball and pitch count and innings and stuff like that, in football, how many games can we play? Do we go through too much workouts, too many practices? NCAA is always, regulating that type of stuff. And that was it was so endearing to see. It was like, yeah, Jordan ain't got time for this load management stuff. He is here to win. That's what he wants to do. And so it was pretty cool to see that.
But it was also a little selfish of Jordan. I mean, like, think about it. One little misstep, and we would have never got those Jordan 3s.
No. Oh, yeah. Oh, how about that? And at the same
time, Space Jam, nothing.
No, the Space Jam one, you remember they kind of had the different colors on it, the black ones?
Yeah.
Dude, I rocked those things for like 2 years in a row. I made my mom give me 2 pairs. I had to go mow a bunch of lawns to do it. And so it's amazing how a guy like that transcends everything. I mean, it's incredible. I've been to the Nike camp up in Beaverton, Oregon. I got some friends that work up there, and we've done some things with Nike in the past. And the camp has, within the campus of the camp, they have all these buildings. They got a Nolan Ryan building. They got a David Robinson building. They got all these, great athletes that have been under the Nike brand. And then within the campus, they have like a Michael Jordan campus. And so it was just incredible what that guy was able to do, not just with the brand. I mean, he was the biggest superstar in the world. And what's funny is on this documentary, you realize he's a lot smarter. He didn't just pick up a basketball and dribble and, the guy was a great player. And that's why this guy was very calculated, very smart, understood his brand, understood everything. And I don't think he gets enough credit for being as smart as he was.
The flag over the Reebok.
Oh yeah. Little subtle things. Right.
But we're talking to Austin Chadwick, publisher and owner of the Vype magazine. And Austin, we just mentioned how recruiting is so big nowadays and everything. And we want to talk to you about that and how Vype helps all these kids get more notoriety and looked at, especially with the Vype 100. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about the beginning of the magazine. How did that all get started?
Back in 2005, I was a finance major at TU. I thought I was going to do interest rates and stocks the rest of my life. And so,
me too.
I had a professor, Bill Hinkle at TU. I took some marketing classes, and I would give presentations. And he's like, "You need to get out of finance. You need to be selling something someday." And I got out of college. Mark Waddell called me from KWHB Channel 47. They used to do tape delay games back in the day, and I went to go be his his analyst, his color guy. And so he would do play-by-play, I'd do color, and we would do these games, and it was great. And so I started understanding that, and then I started selling some sponsorships for it. And the next thing you know, we had tremendous success in doing that stuff and identifying high school sports, identifying communities with the high school brand, and being able to sell advertising. And then, I had some guys that I knew pretty well, and they wanted to do this magazine. And this is back in 2005, and I didn't know anything. I was 24 years old. I didn't know how to manage people. I didn't know anything. Okay. I just knew how to sell, and I was ambitious, and I would work 60 hours a week. And that's how it started. It started as High School Sports magazine. We did it for a couple of years. But we wanted to license it or franchise it out to other cities and make it a model. And Kevin Hearn came in and bought the original owners out. And Kevin Hearn's he's our congressman now in the 1st District of Oklahoma here in Tulsa. And I got to know Kevin. He was my business mentor. I got to work with him for about 3 years and really understood how to, he's a McDonald's franchise owner. Well, operation-wise, he's incredible with business. He hires, fires, knows how to put operations and systems in place, and he taught me how to do that. And eventually it got to a situation where Kevin had other ventures he was getting into, and obviously politics, and he ended up selling me the company because I was the one operating it. And he was great at doing that. He gave me a chance to do it when I couldn't afford anything, right? And I was just mortgaging everything I had to buy the company from him. And that was back in 2010. And we had changed the name in that time to Vype, and got to a situation where we start putting out magazines and doing different regional magazines for all of Oklahoma. And then we started doing a football preview. And Mark Rogers, who now he and I do the Pigskin Preview together, he's been doing the Pigskin Preview since 1996. I mean, so he's been doing it 23 years. And so at the time, he and I weren't affiliated, and it didn't take very long for him to give me a call and say, "Hey, let's do this together. I'm doing broadcasting. I'm doing other things down here with radio in Oklahoma City. I can't keep up with this thing because it's a massive overhaul every year." And so he and I started doing it together. And I think this is our 11th year to do it together. And so the Vype brand, if you will, Vype Oklahoma, is able to put out the Pigskin Preview every year. And so that's where it kind of all got started. But it's still the same thing, Dion. I mean, this time of year, we've been putting out questionnaires and getting coaches on the phone since back in May. And I will say this year was a little bit easier because coaches didn't have anything to do, right? It is a little bit harder because coaches don't know as much about their team because they didn't get a chance to go through spring practice and with all the COVID stuff going on. But this is the time of year where we're grinding, and we're writing capsules. We're putting everything together. We're putting our rankings together, our all Vype teams, our top 100 stuff together. And this is that time of year where you get after it pretty good. But then, hey, you can get off the press before the 4th of July, get these books back, and let everybody have their source, if you will, for high school sports and football in the summertime.
And here's a question for you. How did the Vype name come about? Because you said
Ha!
it was one thing and now it's named Vype. And every time you type it in the word, it's like you get that little red underline under.
Yeah, it doesn't spell it right. Doesn't mean anything,
trust me.
right?
Trust me, it's the spelling.
Yeah, well, we originally called it High School Sports the Magazine, and you get into the branding and trademarking of any kind of brand, that's too generic. We had High School Sports the Magazine. Well, that's like having Cars the magazine. You can't trademark Cars. You can't trademark High School Sports. So we were coming up with it, and Kevin, this is during his time when he owned it, Kevin Hearn, and his I'll never forget Caden, his little 12-year-old son, he came up with the term Vype because we were talking, what do we do here? Is it a play on words? Do we varsity, hype? I'll never forget his son saying, why don't you call it Vype? VYPE. And turns out that acronym worked out. It wasn't really an acronym, more of a play on words, but as far as the VYPE.com, that was available and all the brand, that was easier to brand because it was a unique name. And so that's how we got it trademarked, and we've gone through all that stuff. But that was back in 2007. And so it's funny because you start doing that. And now not only do we have obviously kids who know what the brand is in Oklahoma, because we just cover so many kids throughout the year across the state, you're starting to have second generation kids. You're starting to have kids you got parents that had kids early and they're just like, yeah, I remember being in that magazine, and now their kids are in it, right? And so that's when you realize, you kind of shake your head and you're like, goodness gracious, I'm getting old here if I'm getting second generation kids coming up in the magazine. And so we've been doing it for a while. This year will mark our 16th year. We're getting into it, and then obviously the 11th year we've been doing the Pigskin Preview. So,
Austin, are you telling me a 12-year-old kid?
Yes,
your company.
Yes, yeah. It was. We were. You get these think tanks, and you're trying to figure things out, and you're really overcomplicating things sometimes. And then the 12-year-old kid is like, well, what about if we want varsity and you're hyping up kids, well, varsity hype. I mean, and I'll never forget Caden saying Vype, and I don't know if he got it from like, Brangelina, or you kind of merge names together, right?
Yeah.
Benifer, when Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez. And so he says, why don't you just call it Vype? And I was like, and then everybody went home and slept on it. And we came back the next day and we're like, bingo, that sounds good. Let's just do that. And so, yes, that's how, but I'll tell you, some of these companies sometimes with their brands, you'd be amazed at how they get their brand. It could be a 12-year-old kid coming up with something. It could be a dog that just does something, or the way he sounds when he yells or barks, or you have no idea. And so it's crazy how when I tell people that today, they're like, wait a minute, your brand you've been doing for over a decade is from a 12-year-old kid? Yep, it is. And so that's kind of, we're transparent here. We'll tell you exactly how it works.
That's a great story. So now with the pandemic and COVID-19 and everything taking place, how has it changed? I know you mentioned it's kind of easier getting in contact with coaches, but how has it changed things on the macro level for Vype and the magazine and what we're going to see this year?
Yeah, on the regular monthly reoccurring things with the magazine, as we're putting out magazines regionally in Oklahoma and content online at vypeok.com, we've got over 250 clients, advertisers in Oklahoma. And a lot of those are retail advertisers. And it's hard for them, obviously, if a car dealership isn't able to open for a good 60 days or, a restaurant or something like that. So we've had to work with them. And obviously that affects business. But at the same time, the difference is, and Dion, I went through the financial crisis in 08 and 09. And that was probably harder to deal with, just talking commerce, just talking running your business, because nobody knew when the bottom was going to drop out there. The confidence was very low, and it was harder to get things going again, economy wise. Now, with what's going on with COVID, it's almost like it's like a bump in the road. Economy's going pretty good, and this stuff happens, and it's like nobody's really afraid. Everybody fully expects the economy to get going again. So on the business side, we'll be able to bounce back pretty good if we lost anything. But from the logistics side, we've had to learn how to work remotely. We've had to learn how to figure things out sometimes. And on the ghost mail side of the business we have, when we deal with colleges all the time, they're much more versed at getting online and doing presentations through Zoom or some of the different ability or some of the different platforms to be able to do meetings and things like that. So obviously we've had to change. I mean, you got to adapt or die. I mean, that's just kind of how it works. But overall, I think, the one thing with high school coaches, The OSSA, I think, has done a pretty good job. They put out the plan. They know what they want to do. They know that we've got to be safe. Everybody understands that, and they're working hand in hand with the Oklahoma Department of Safety. But at the same time, there's been so much uncertainty. But you get in some of these communities, and I'll never forget. I was talking to a pretty predominant 6A coach last week, and he's like, it's just, we understand the precautions we got to take, and we got to keep kids safe. We got to keep families safe and our community safe, but we got to have football. We just got to have it. And that's a microcosm of the bigger picture in America, especially with college football. The great thing about sports is that no matter what's going on in society, sports can bring everybody together. Fans, teammates, whoever. I mean, it doesn't matter. And so that I thought that was very poignant from a pretty predominant coach, just saying it's going to be therapeutic. We got to have it. And he's real big into the psychology of society and the psychology of communities. And he's like, we can heal a lot faster in some of the turmoil and stuff we're going through when we're able to rally around something that we all agree on and we all love. And that is competition, that's sports. And when it comes to the summertime and into the fall in the United States of America, that's football. And so with that being said, that's where I just thought that was very interesting. He just said we just need it. We got to have it. And it'll help therapeutically for everybody.
So you just mentioned the ghost mail and everything that your company is doing now, and a lot of people have heard of it throughout YouTube, and different news affiliates have been mentioning what you're doing. But I mean, for me as a former guy who was blessed to get offers and receive letters from other colleges, we know how big of a deal that is. I remember being in high school and all the athletes. I mean, if you were getting letters, you put them in your back pocket.
Oh yeah,
the little letter, the little logo of the school hang out there. The girls would look at it. You would be the big guy on campus. So that's a big deal.
That's a tactic. That's good. That's
hey man, we were smart about it. So so your company is the one sending it to the kids here locally in Oklahoma, or kind of clarify what
yeah. Okay. So this was great. Clint Roundtree and I, Clint is a Tahlequah kid. He was an all-state basketball and football player, played with me at Tulsa. And Clint was the director of recruiting at the University of Tulsa. And he and I work pretty close because I've got some printers here, and I'd donate some stuff to the football program at Tulsa. They've got their limitations at the University of Tulsa, a smaller school, and so I would try to help out any way I can. And so what was happening was Clint was doing all the mailers, and you know how it is, Dion. You're stuffing envelopes, you're writing handwritten letters, you're doing, and so as more of the designs started changing, we call them edits now. Where a kid gets something from a school on Twitter, he'll retweet something where, if a kid's getting recruited by Alabama or something, Alabama's put his name and a jersey number on the back of a Crimson Tide jersey in a locker, and the kid tweets it out. So you started seeing different design elements in recruiting. And so what we were doing was we did something and kind of pioneered this, where we started doing it as direct mail. And basically what it meant was you don't have to stuff an envelope. You can send high quality, high gloss, UV coated, great looking prints that will hold up in the mail. You can send them as direct mail. And you and I get direct mail all the time, whether it's Bed Bath & Beyond, this weekend, or the sale going on at Walmart, or whatever it might be. We get direct mail all the time as just consumers. And especially in political season, you get direct mail all the time. Vote for this guy, vote for this gal, all of it. And so from that standpoint, we started saying, okay, well, what if we do it as direct mail? Because there's some advantages there, kind of even down to where it's placed when you get the mail. And so we went through the channels of the NCAA just to get it cleared as general correspondence. And we started it at Tulsa. And I'll never forget, there was a John Tyler high school coach. And John Tyler's a pretty big time school in Texas. Yeah, it is. And he tweeted out a photo of all the mail that their recruits were getting. And dude, it had everything. It had Texas and Baylor and LSU. They had mail from everybody, and all the mail was in an envelope. And sitting on top, I kid you not, sitting on top with some of the very first mailings we did was a TU mailer, and it wasn't in an envelope. It was just sitting there. And I'll send you the photo, and maybe you guys can put it up during the broadcast. Yeah. But it was just sitting there, and I thought to myself with Clint, I said, okay, what's it worth to the University of Tulsa to have their mail not in an envelope, and it's sitting right on top for everybody to see. There's small margins in competitiveness with Division I athletics, and that is a big deal, obviously, to a college coach. What's it worth to Philip Montgomery that his kids that he's recruiting sees his mail before they even open anything else? And so we got some traction. I wrote the business plan that night, and over time, Clint, he expressed he was in coaching for 15 years. He wanted to get out. And he flat out told me, "Hey, I'm coming to work with you. We're going to do this," and we just took it across the country. Clint has been into every D1 program in the country, and now we've got 45 D1 schools we work with. And Tulsa is centrally located. It's great because basically it doesn't matter if it's USC or Michigan or Tennessee or Texas. All these big schools we work with, they'll send us artwork and they'll send us a list of kids, and we get it out the same day here in Tulsa, and it goes all over the country. It doesn't matter if you're recruiting a kid in New Jersey, that we'll get it to the kid in 48 hours. And so it takes a lot of pressure off of these schools to, have the staff to stuff envelopes. A bunch of GAs are in there spending so much time labeling things and stuffing envelopes. Now they can just send us some artwork and a list, and the next thing you know, we're able to get it out for them pretty effectively and easy, and we save them money. And especially this day and age when budgets are getting cut and everybody is kind of watching every dime they spend, we give them the tools to be able to do this and not break the bank, if you will.
Well, speaking as a former athlete, to get some of those letters, I mean, keep doing what you're doing. I'm pretty sure they're appreciating it in many ways.
I appreciate that.
Well, now that's been said, I mean, what does the future for Vype look now? Going like 5 years from now, going into the future, what does the future for Vype look like?
I think properties a little bit we'll get into. My company, Trinity Media Group, which is the company of Vype, we recently just signed a deal with the OSSAA. We're basically taking on the multimedia rights for the OSSAA. We are like their Learfield. Anybody knows anything about college and Learfield and how those properties work, we're doing that for the OSSAA. And what it is lended to is the opportunity for us to really kind of model some of the stuff that we do, how we provide value to potential sponsors and things like that when it comes to leveraging the activities of the OSSAA, whether it's programs, signage, I mean, how it goes, radio, TV, all that stuff. And so with that being said, we've got some of those components we can put together and maybe take it to some high schools and help some of the schools do the same things. I mean, we're loaded up with the resources of printers, and we're able to, whether it's ticket backs, whether it's posters, whether it's different things that high schools use and that they can monetize a little bit and help raise some money. I think that's probably the next thing we're going to work on when it comes over the next 5 years is taking the relationships we've built for decades now with these high school coaches and administrators and showing them how they can leverage some of the things they have to bring more money into the programs or into the athletic department or into the school in general. And so that's where I think we're going to go a little bit of that. We'll always be doing a magazine. We'll always be doing a pigskin preview. We'll be highlighting kids throughout the year online and in print. But there are some things that we can probably do properties wise over the next 5 years that'll help kind of change some things. So.
Speaking of that magazine, this year's magazine, you just told me y'all are into the grind season where y'all are putting it together and talking to coaches and getting it all figured out. But can you give me a little insight? You know how much I love reading the magazine every year. Who is gonna be on the cover this year? That's the question everybody wants to know. Who's on the cover?
We did a little concept cover, and the first thing I asked my guys, hey, give me the top 4 guys in the state. And a couple of them are pretty obvious. You've got some kids around here, especially locally on the eastern side of the state. Dude, AJ Green, Dion, you've seen this kid. Yeah, he's special. The Union running back really does a lot of things for him. This kid's he's up there with the kind of the Dominique Franks, type caliber athletes. Trey Brown, the kind of speed that kid had. Now he's playing for OU. It's pretty special to see AJ play. He'll probably be one on the cover. Another one just south of Tulsa, obviously, is Kendall Daniels from Beggs. This kid is a long, athletic, He is the prototype that everybody is looking for kind of a defensive back safety type situation. Kind of got that Cam Chancellor look to him, very physical. And he's a special player. He's been doing it for 2 years now. He started as a sophomore. And so he's a very, very exceptional player. On the west side, Cam Oliver is a really good player at Edmond Santa Fe. I think you've seen him a couple of times.
Yeah.
The kid's a great athlete. Edmond Santa Fe's got a lot of good players now. And then going to the west side of the state, way out there on I-40, you get out to Weatherford, and the Downs kid is a pretty good player. That's obviously Ethan Downs is already committed to OU, and he's a long defensive end, tight end type kid, and but he's pretty special. I mean, the kid gets the ball in his hands and he can go score, and so they put him at running back before. So he's a good player. So and here's what's crazy, Dion, is that it's changed so much. I mean, you start thinking about Josh Jacobs, not just going to Alabama. Because, listen, anybody can offer a kid from Oklahoma, but if the kid actually pans out like Josh Jacobs did at Alabama, then you go back to Oklahoma and go get another one. And so the next thing you know, when I just couldn't believe it when, Dax Hill is getting recruited by Michigan a couple of years ago. And then obviously Josh Proctor signs with Ohio State, where
that was the big one right there. That was the one that opened the door for everybody.
And so when Urban Meyer and Greg Schiano was his defensive coordinator at the time, when they're coming to Tulsa, all of a sudden Oklahoma they don't fly over Oklahoma anymore. When they come to Tulsa, they're going to go to Tulsa and they're going to go to Oklahoma City and they're going to go look at some of these kids. So you're starting to see these crazy offers that Tulsa was kind of a best kept secret for some coaches where in Oklahoma in general, where coaches, from Arkansas or maybe every now and then from TCU or every now and then from Notre Dame, you get coaches coming into Oklahoma because nobody else really knew about it. And you could go find a guy. But now you can't do that. Yeah, everybody knows that Oklahoma, if you come into Tulsa, you're going to go over to Union, you're going to go over to Wasso and Broken Arrow, Bigsby and Jenks and Booker T High School, and you're going to go look for some athletes because now you don't just have to come look for one kid. You might find 4 or 5 kids you want to really recruit hard. So it's really changed. And with that being said, there's so many kids we could put on the cover of the Pigskin Preview. But we'll probably try to keep it down to 4, 5, maybe 6 kids and have a good time with that.
And with that being said, I mean, it kind of affects our local schools as well. Like you said, I mean, now instead of being able to heavily rely on these Oklahoma kids, they're having to, branch out more, go to California and all kinds of different states to find top-notch kids because everybody's going in their backyard and getting their players as well.
That's right. And I think it changes a lot of things. It's not automatic anymore. It used to be if OU wanted a kid in Oklahoma, they were going to get him. And very, very seldom did they lose out on a battle. Every now and then a kid would choose Oklahoma State if he was an OSU fan his whole life. But overall, you just look at it now. If R.W. McQuarters was coming through right now and he got a chance to go play for Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, he's also going to get that chance to maybe take a trip to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and go to Tuscaloosa, and maybe go to Auburn, Alabama, and look at some of these other big-time programs. And a guy like R.W. might not have been an OSU guy. He might have gone out of state. So it's definitely become much different. You got to fight harder for guys in town, and a lot of it is, and I credit a lot of it to it, is you got guys from Oklahoma who are coaching at big-time programs. Yeah. Matt Wells, half his staff's from Oklahoma and Texas Tech, so they're here all the time. And so as well as anybody, when you start seeing some of these schools coming into Oklahoma, you and I, first thing we say is, all right, who's the coach? Who's got Oklahoma ties on that staff that's coming into Oklahoma? And you're just seeing a lot of Oklahoma guys all over the country. And it doesn't surprise you if the next thing you know, you look up and gosh, Rutgers is in Oklahoma. What are they doing here? Have they ever signed a kid out of Oklahoma? When you look on staff, you're like, okay, that guy's from Oklahoma. I forgot there's a guy on staff there. And so that's what you're going to do. If you're a college coach, you're going to go to what you know and the coaches and the area you came from, and it's much easier to recruit that way.
And last question before we get you out of here, Austin. I mean, one of the resources that these coaches are using to figure out which players they should be looking at is that Vype 100. Mm-hmm. Now, what goes into that list? How hard is it to come up with? And when you're getting on the line where you're like, who's going to be the 199th player? How is that decided? It gets arbitrary sometimes. Generally when we put that list together, and this year I think we're going to try something new. We're probably going to have a rolling list. And when I say rolling list, it basically means that these players are going to be eligible for our Mr. Football Award that we do every year. And with that being said,
if guys are missing out and they don't make the top 100, then, and I'll give you a great example. Pappy White was a running back from Seminole a few years ago that went up to play, I think at Miami of Ohio or at Toledo or something up in the MAC. And he had a great career. Well, we didn't even have the kid on our radar. And the next thing you know, they get to game 6, the kid already had like 1,400 yards. I mean, he was lighting it up. And Seminole, he took him to a state title game. And so it's those kind of players that you miss out on that might be young guys or get a chance, because somebody gets hurt or something. And you end up putting them on the list later. But, we generally take the Division I offer kids, and between, seniors, juniors, and sophomores so far this year, we've got about 51 kids in Oklahoma that have D1 offers. And that's kind of an automatic, to get on the list. And then from there, we go with the best players in high school. And so the beauty of it is with us is that sometimes you get yourself in a situation, to where you've got a player from a small school, like from Alec, Oklahoma, or from Pauls Valley, or from Beggs or something like that. And they're fantastic high school football players. They're the best player on their team. We had a kid from Poto last year that made like every tackle. He carried the ball every time, and he was also their quarterback. And so at the same time, you look at kids like that, he might not have the body type or he might not be what D1 football players or coaches are looking for to play at the D1 level. And but for 4A Poto, this kid has taken him to the state championship. I mean, it's a big, big deal, obviously, to them, and how invaluable a kid like that is. So we want to make sure kids like that are included on the list. And so we try to say, okay, you got a Division I scholarship. That's kind of the college coaches have vetted you, if you will, to be a good player, obviously. And then from there, we're going to pick the best high school players in the state because that's what we cover. We're not really a recruiting service. We cover the best high school players in the state, but then it turns back around because a lot of coaches, especially small school coaches, whether it's UCO or Missouri State or Emporia or Pitt State or something like that, some of these D2 and 1AA schools, they'll ask for copies of the magazine because they want to see some kids that maybe they can pick up that might not be a D1 kid, but they know we're going to have them covered, obviously, in our top 100.
Well, Austin, so for everybody who's listening right now, when does the new magazine drop?
Mid-July. We'll drop it on mid-July. It's generally we get it back from the printers. It will be we'll send out pre-orders. You can go to vypeok.com and pre-order your copy. That means you're going to get it straight from the printer, so you probably get it before we even get it back. And so from there, it takes a few days, but we're going to get it out into on-queues across all the areas. In the Tulsa area, we always go to Midwest Sporting Goods. Everybody's going in there to get their apparel for the year anyways. And so we made Midwest Sporting Goods kind of our exclusive place to go get it. And so people in Tulsa can just go over there and pick that up. And so we've got all different retailers across Oklahoma. But with COVID going on and people kind of doing their social distancing, the easiest way to do it is just do it by mail and get online at vypeok.com. You can order your copy and you're going to get it before anybody else. And so that's the best way to do it. Dion, I'll have your copy. I'll even sign it for you if you want me to.
Wow.
And make sure you get copies for your crew and your guys that you're going to do games with, and make sure everybody's taken care of over at Cox and YurView, and even some of your producer guys. We'll make sure you get. Yeah, I'll let you be the hero. You can just walk in with the magazine with everybody saying, "Hey, look,
make it
look what I got for you guys."
Well, I appreciate it, Austin, and thank you so much. I know we took up a lot of your time, but appreciate you doing this with us, and for everything that you guys do at Vype Magazine. We appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts from here at Cox YurView. So thank you, man. And,
I appreciate it, buddy. You keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great. Keep grinding, working hard, man.